Imagine your life's work, your parents' entire $1.5 million retirement, vanishing overnight thanks to the one person they trusted most, my golden boy older brother, Ethan. That very nightmare became my reality, a successful architect suddenly thrust into a crisis of devastating proportions. Now, I face the sickening task of unraveling a web of deceit and high-risk gambles he orchestrated, all before my parents lose absolutely everything, including their cherished home. But the bitterest pill? I wasn't even sure they'd accept my help. The son they'd always seen as secondary. It all began on a Tuesday, a day that would forever be seared into my memory. The sweeping vista from my office on the 47th floor in Midtown Manhattan, usually a source of quiet pride, offered no solace that Tuesday. My name is Liam Hayes, and at 34, I'd established myself as an architect, a profession that felt a world away from my family's more traditional financial leanings. That morning, the city's anthemic hum was drowned out by the ice suddenly gripping my veins. The call was from Mr. Henderson, our family's trusted, if somewhat old-fashioned, financial advisor. His voice, normally a reassuring baritone, was uncharacteristically strained. "Liam," he started, a distinct tremor in his tone, "I have some deeply unsettling news regarding your parents' retirement portfolio." I gripped the edge of my steel desk, a premonition coiling in my gut. "What is it, Mr. Henderson?" The words that followed felt like a physical punch. It's all gone, Liam. The entire fund. Every last dollar of the $1.5 million. $1.5 million. Obliterated. This was the sum total of my parents' Arthur and Olivia's life savings, meticulously accrued from their long careers as dedicated educators in Boston. They were literally counting the weeks to a well-deserved, peaceful retirement. How could this happen? I choked out, the question hanging heavy in the sterile air. "From what we can ascertain," Henderson explained, his voice heavy with professional dismay, "the funds were systematically transferred into a series of extremely high-risk, unverified investments, all under your brother Ethan's direct management." Ethan, my financially astute older brother. The news was a brutal, sickening blow. Their security, their dreams, all gone. The sickening thud of Mr. Henderson's words echoed in my mind, dragging me back through years of a familiar, unspoken family dynamic. Ethan. He'd always been the golden child, the one my parents, particularly my father, Arthur, openly touted as the financially savvy one. While I, Liam, was sketching blueprints and dreaming of skylines, Ethan was acing his business degree at Wharton, then effortlessly sliding into a prestigious role at a Boston investment firm. My choice to pursue architecture, initially at a smaller, more innovative firm, before I struck out and eventually landed my current position, had always been met with a sort of benign bewilderment by my parents. "It's a lovely passion, Liam," my mother, Olivia, would say, a hint of concern in her voice. "But is it stable?" Ethan, meanwhile, couldn't resist the occasional condescending remark during family gatherings. "Still playing with building blocks, little brother?" He'd smirk. "While you're drawing pretty pictures, I'm making real money, shaping financial futures." The irony now was a bitter pill. He was shaping futures, all right, just not in the way anyone had envisioned. His real money talk had always been backed by my parents' unwavering, almost blind faith. Every promotion, every bonus, every minor stock market win, Ethan claimed was celebrated, while my own quiet, hard-won successes in the demanding world of architecture were often met with a polite nod, perceived more as a quaint hobby than a serious career. He was the pragmatic one, the heir to their sensible New England values. I was the dreamer. Now, the dreamer was confronting the nightmare his pragmatic brother had unleashed. The initial shockwave gave way to a cold, determined resolve. I couldn't just stand by. I spent the next 48 hours immersed in a crash course on my parents' finances, Mr. Henderson reluctantly forwarding me the digital breadcrumbs of Ethan's disastrous management. It wasn't pretty. My brother hadn't just made a few bad calls. He'd systematically funneled their nest egg into ludicrously speculative ventures, offshore real estate schemes with no tangible assets, obscure tech startups that had vanished without a trace, and what looked suspiciously like high-risk cryptocurrency gambles disguised as diversified digital assets. The sheer recklessness was astounding. Armed with this horrifying clarity, I called my mother, Olivia. I tried to keep my voice calm, measured. "Mom," I began, "I've spoken with Mr. Henderson. I know about the retirement fund." A strained silence stretched across the line from Boston. "Liam," she finally said, her voice tight with a forced cheerfulness that didn't quite mask the underlying panic. "Ethan is handling it. He's assured us he has a plan to rectify the situation. These things happen in the market, you know. Ups and downs." I bit back a frustrated sigh. "Mom, with all due respect, these weren't just ups and downs. These were catastrophic losses. Let me help. My firm is doing well. I have resources." "We don't need your help, dear." She cut me off, a familiar edge of dismissal creeping in. "Ethan is the expert in these matters. He's always been good with money." The unspoken, "unlike you," hung heavy in the air. My offer, born of genuine concern, was cast aside. Once again, I was the outsider, the one who simply didn't understand real business. My mother's polite but firm dismissal stung, but it didn't deter me. If they wouldn't accept direct help, I'd have to find another way. My mind raced, sifting through possibilities. Beyond the immediate loss of their liquid retirement funds, a more insidious threat loomed. Their beloved summer home in Cape Cod, a charming, weathered cedar shingle cottage overlooking Buzzards Bay, had been in our family for generations. It was more than just property. It was their sanctuary, filled with memories. I suspected, correctly as it turned out, that Ethan, in his desperation or arrogance, might have leveraged it or used it as collateral for some of his reckless schemes. A few discreet inquiries through my own legal counsel, a sharp woman named Ms. Albright, who specialized in complex property law, confirmed my worst fears. Several liens had been quietly placed against the Cape Cod property, and property taxes had gone unpaid for the last 2 quarters. It was only a matter of time before foreclosure proceedings began. They were going to lose the house. The thought of my parents, Arthur and Olivia, already reeling from financial ruin, being evicted from their cherished haven was unbearable. That's when the idea solidified. I would buy it. Anonymously, of course. Ms. Albright began the intricate process of setting up a blind trust, a series of legal firewalls designed to make the true buyer untraceable. It was a complex maneuver, but necessary. Just as we were finalizing the trust documents, an email landed in my inbox. It was from Ethan. Subject: Family Matters. The content was brief, chillingly calm. "Liam, I hear you've been asking questions. Stay out of this. It doesn't concern you. It concerned me more than he could ever imagine. The final legal preparations for the blind trust were underway when my father, Arthur, called. His voice, usually so confident, held a tremor of desperation I hadn't heard since my grandmother's passing. "Liam, son," he began. "Ethan. He says he's very close to a breakthrough, a new investment that could recoup a significant portion of what was lost, but he needs a small bridge loan, just $75,000 to tide things over." 75,000. My heart sank. Even now, after everything, they were still clinging to Ethan's fantasies. "Dad," I said gently, "I really think the best course of action now is to consult an independent financial recovery specialist, someone completely objective." "We don't need more specialists, Liam," he interrupted, his voice rising. "We need to trust Ethan." The conversation ended with a strained goodbye. There was no convincing them. The auction for the Cape Cod house was scheduled for the following Tuesday at the Barnstable County Courthouse. I took the day off, dressing in a way I hoped would make me anonymous. A nondescript baseball cap pulled low, plain glasses I didn't need, and a jacket far removed from my usual tailored style. The auction room was small, filled with a handful of local developers and a few curious onlookers. My parents sat in the front row, looking pale and drawn, Ethan beside them, whispering reassurances that clearly weren't working. When the auctioneer announced, "Lot 3, property at 112 Ocean View Drive," my pulse quickened. The bidding started low, then climbed steadily. When it hit 1.2 million, I saw my mother's shoulders begin to shake. 1.8 million, I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. A hush fell over the room. The gavel came down. "Sold to the representative of the Osprey Bay Trust." My parents didn't even glance my way. It was less than a week later, a damp Thursday afternoon, when my assistant, Chloe, buzzed through with an uncharacteristic urgency in her voice. "Mr. Hayes, your family is here. Your brother and your parents. They don't have an appointment." Before I could respond, my office door burst open. Ethan strode in, his face a mask of fury. My parents, Arthur and Olivia, trailing behind him looking bewildered and deeply uncomfortable. My mother clutched a sheaf of papers, likely the official notice from the Osprey Bay Trust about the change of ownership. "I knew it," Ethan snarled, slamming a hand down on my polished mahogany desk, though he didn't have any papers himself. "The Osprey Bay Trust! Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out, Liam? Buying our family home out from under us. What kind of sick game is this? Trying to humiliate us? Show off your big-shot architect money?" My father looked aghast, his gaze darting around my spacious Manhattan office, taking in the bespoke furniture and the framed awards, as if seeing it all for the first time. "Liam," he stammered, "what is Ethan talking about?" This trust. They say they bought the Cape Cod house." I remained seated, striving for an outward calm I didn't entirely feel. "And how exactly did you figure it out, Ethan?" I asked, my voice level. He puffed out his chest. "I have my ways. I traced the incorporation papers, the layers. It all leads back to you, somehow. You can't hide these things from someone who knows the system." He was bluffing, I was certain. The legal labyrinth Miss Albright had constructed was virtually impenetrable for a casual or even a determined amateur investigator. He was fishing, hoping I'd crack. I leaned back in my chair, meeting Ethan's glare. "Interesting theory, Ethan. But let's put aside your detective work for a moment." I picked up the thick envelope Chloe had placed on my desk earlier. The official, legally binding lease agreement prepared by Ms. Albright for the Osprey Bay Trust. "As for making you homeless, this document, which your mother is holding a copy of, offers your parents lifetime tenancy of the Cape Cod property for a nominal sum of $100 per year, utilities and maintenance covered by the trust. Hardly an eviction, wouldn't you agree? My father's brow furrowed. So, you admit it? You're behind this Osprey Bay Trust? I finally stood, walking over to my large presentation monitor. Whether I am or not is less important than why it was necessary, Dad. Ethan, you claimed you were handling things. Let's see exactly what that entailed. With a few clicks of my mouse, I brought up a series of documents I had painstakingly compiled: bank transfer records, email chains with dubious investment managers, screenshots of defunct cryptocurrency exchanges. Here, I said, pointing to a large transaction, is where $500,000 of their retirement fund went into a guaranteed high-yield offshore property scheme that was flagged as a Ponzi scheme 3 months later. And this, another click, is the transfer to a so-called eco-tech startup in a country whose name I can barely pronounce, which dissolved 2 weeks after receiving the funds. My parents stared, aghast, at the screen, the color draining from their faces. And here, I continued, my voice devoid of triumph, only a weary sadness, are the numerous margin calls Ethan incurred, using what little was left as collateral for increasingly desperate gambles. Ethan sputtered. That's not accurate. It's out of context. But the evidence was irrefutable, laid out in stark, damning detail. The silence in my office was heavy, broken only by my mother Olivia's soft, shaky breaths as she stared at the damning evidence on the monitor. Ethan, for once, seemed speechless, his usual bluster deflated. My father, Arthur, looked older than I'd ever seen him, the fight draining out of him as the reality of his favored son's deceptions settled in. "Why, Liam?" he finally whispered, his voice raspy. "Why go to such lengths, and why not just tell us?" A humorless laugh escaped me. "Tell you?" "Dad, when have you ever truly listened to me about anything remotely financial? You and Mom have spent my entire adult life convinced Ethan was the financial wunderkind, while I was just the artistic one. Even after I built this firm, even after every indication, you trusted him implicitly. Would you have accepted my help, or would you have seen it as me trying to usurp Ethan's authority?" My mother flinched. "That's not fair, Liam." "Isn't it, Mom?" I countered, my voice firm but not unkind. "When I called to offer help, what did you say?" "Ethan is handling it. Ethan has a plan. It was always Ethan." I gestured towards the lease agreement still in her hand. "The Osprey Bay Trust will ensure you have a home, but there are conditions." I slid another document across my desk. "Ethan will have no involvement whatsoever in your future finances. He will not reside at the Cape Cod property, nor will he have any authority over its affairs, and any attempt by him to engage you in further investment opportunities will nullify this lease." Ethan finally found his voice, a high-pitched whine. "You can't do this." "I can," I stated flatly. "And I am." My father slowly picked up the conditions, his hand trembling as he read. My father, Arthur, signed the agreement regarding the Cape Cod house with a hand that still trembled slightly. My mother, Olivia, looking over his shoulder, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. Ethan, after a final sputtering protest about family loyalty that rang hollow even to his own ears, stormed out of my Manhattan office, his expensive shoes clicking angrily on the polished concrete floor. As my parents prepared to leave, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them, my father paused at the door. "This firm, "Liam," he said, gesturing vaguely around my office. "It's impressive. We never really knew." A faint, sad smile touched my lips. "No, Dad," I replied softly. "You never did." After they left, I sat for a long time, watching the New York City lights begin to twinkle as dusk settled. The raw ache of years of being misunderstood, of being the family's other son, had begun to subside. Months passed. My parents, with the quiet, arm's-length assistance of the Osprey Bay Trust and a legitimate financial advisor I'd arranged for them, adjusted to a more modest but secure life in their beloved Cape Cod home. Ethan, I heard through the family grapevine, had relocated to somewhere on the West Coast, chasing new, unspecified ventures. And I continued to build my architectural firm, designing structures that pushed boundaries, winning awards, achieving a level of success that once I would have desperately craved their applause for. But somewhere along the arduous journey of proving them wrong, I'd stopped needing their validation. I had proven myself right, and that, I realized, was more than enough. The dreamer had not only saved the day, but had also, finally, found his own solid ground. My journey, I've come to realize, underscores a powerful truth. My inherent value wasn't dictated by my family's validation, but by the integrity of my actions and the strength of my convictions. While familial love is undeniably complex, offering tangible support and confronting difficult truths, as I ultimately had to, proved more vital than their blind faith in Ethan. Looking back, my story offers several takeaways that I hope resonate. Firstly, trust in your unique path. Even if you feel like the black sheep, as I often did, your distinct talents and dedicated efforts will eventually speak for themselves. Secondly, be wary of illusions. Don't let affection or grand promises obscure your rational judgment, especially in financial or personal assessments. Thirdly, cultivate independence, both financial and emotional, because that's what empowered me to act decisively and offer help on my own terms. Finally, I learned that sometimes the most effective assistance is discreet, and true peace often comes from releasing that deep-seated need for others' approval. My ultimate triumph wasn't just saving my parents' home, but in freeing myself. What resonates with you from my story? Have you ever felt undervalued, yet persevered to prove your worth? Share your own experiences or the lessons you've drawn in the comments below. I'd genuinely love to hear them. If my story moved or inspired you, please like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more insightful narratives and analyses. Thank you for listening.